This podcast contains discussions of violent and disturbing content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is strongly advised. The views and opinions expressed are for informational and entertainment purposes only and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast's creators, hosts, or affiliated parties. If you or someone you know is in need of support, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional. This episode is brought to you by listeners like you, our intergalactic fuel, and the boost behind this mic. Thanks for supporting our cosmic journey through the universe of sci-fi.
Prepare for warp speed as we embark on a voyage through the vast expanse of science fiction in movies and television series. From distant planets to alien civilizations, we delve into the heart of the unknown, unraveling the tales that have captivated audiences for generations. Get ready to unlock the secrets of the universe on Flix.
Hello and welcome to Flix, the podcast where we take a deep dive into your favorite sci-fi and fantasy TV shows and movies. I am Andre Bonner, and in today's episode, we'll be exploring power, morality, and the masks we wear in the movie Watchmen. When I first saw Watchmen, I could feel it. This wasn't your typical superhero movie. It was a bold, unapologetic step in a new direction, one that flipped the familiar heroes save the day dynamic on its head. This isn't about capes and glory, it's about the ugly side of justice, power, and human nature. The Watchmen are a group of mass vigilantes, heroes, yes, but far from squeaky clean. Each one carries deep personal baggage, moral gray areas, and some downright disturbing backstories. These aren't idealized icons, they're messy, flawed people trying to navigate a broken world. And when one of their own is brutally murdered, thrown from a window with cold-blooded precision, the mystery kicks off. Enter Rorschach, the only hero left who refuses to go into hiding. Paranoid, violent, and unrelenting, he launches an investigation that drags him into a conspiracy far bigger than he expected. Along the way, he's framed, imprisoned, and forced to confront the dark truths even he's not ready for. The film interweaves layered flashbacks and side stories, including a harrowing animated tale of a castaway who descends into madness, which parallels the central narrative in haunting ways. All this plays out against the backdrop of nuclear paranoia and global tension. The world teeters on the edge of destruction. Then comes Ozymandias, one of their own, who uses Dr. Manhattan's near godlike power to orchestrate a devastating plan for world peace, but at a cost that forces you to question everything you believe about morality, sacrifice, and justice. And when you think the story is over, you realize it was the beginning. A decade later, Watchmen was followed up by a TV series that deepened the themes and reintroduced the mythos to a new generation. Yes, I'll definitely be covering that in an upcoming episode. So, if you're ready for a film that's going to challenge your view of right and wrong, make you uncomfortable in the best way, and leave you questioning who the real heroes are, then buckle up because this deep dive into Watchmen is going to be anything but simple.
Watchmen is a 2009 American superhero film based on the 1986 to 1987 DC Comics limited series of the same name co-created and illustrated by Dave Gibbons, with co-creator and author Alan Moore choosing to remain uncredited. Directed by Zack Snyder from a screenplay by David Hayter and Alex Tse, the film features Malin Ackerman, Billy Crudup, Matthew Good, Carla Gugino, Jackie L. Haley, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and Patrick Wilson. A dark and dystopian deconstruction of the superhero genre, the film is set in an alternate history in the year 1985 at the height of the Cold War, as a group of mostly retired American superheroes investigate the murder of one of their own before uncovering an elaborate and deadly conspiracy with which they are all connected. For nearly 2 decades from October 1987 until October 2005, a live-action film adaptation of the Watchmen series became stranded in development hell. Producers Lawrence Gordon and Joel Silver began developing the project at 20th Century Fox, later moving it to Warner Brothers Pictures, the sister company of Watchmen publisher DC Comics, and hiring director Terry Gilliam, who eventually left the production and deemed the complex comic unfilmable. During the 2000s, Gordon and Lloyd Levin collaborated with Universal Pictures, Revolution Studios and Paramount Pictures to produce the film. Directors David Hayter, Darren Aronofsky, and Paul Greengrass were attached to the project before it was cancelled over budget disputes. In October 2005, the project returned to Warner Brothers, where Snyder was hired to direct. Paramount remained as its international distributor, whereas Warner Brothers would distribute the film in the United States. However, Fox sued Warner Brothers for copyright violation arising from Gordon's failure to pay a buyout in 1991, which enabled him to develop the film at the other studios. Fox and Warner Brothers settled this before the film's release, with Fox receiving a portion of the gross. Principal photography began in Vancouver, in September 2007. As with his previous film 300, 2006, Snyder closely modeled his storyboards on the comic but chose not to shoot all of Watchmen using green screens and opted for real sets instead. Following its world premiere at Odeon Leicester Square on February 23, 2009, the film was released in both conventional and IMAX theaters on March 6, 2009. The film underperformed at the box office, grossing over $185.4 million worldwide against a production budget between $130 to $138 million. However, the film later found financial success at the home media markets. Greg Silverman, former Warner Brothers executive, said that the film did later become profitable. The film received mixed to positive reviews from fans and critics. The style was praised, but Snyder was accused of making an action film that lacked the thematic depth and nuance of the comic. Over the years, it gained a cult following. A DVD based on elements of the Watchmen universe was released, including an animated adaptation of the Tales of the Black Freighter comic within the story voiced by Gerard Butler and a fictional documentary titled Under the Hood detailing the older generation of superheroes from the film's backstory. A director's cut with 24 minutes of additional footage was released in July 2009. The Ultimate Cut edition incorporated the animated comic Tales of the Black Freighter into the narrative as it was in the original graphic novel, lengthening the runtime to 3 hours and 35 minutes, and was released on November 10, 2009. The director's cut was better received than the theatrical release. In 1985, a man living in a Manhattan apartment watches news about escalating Cold War tensions and the response from five-term President Richard Nixon when an unknown assailant attacks and hurls him to the street below. Throughout the opening credits, a montage reviews the rise of costumed crime fighters from 1939 to 1977, culminating in public backlash and the passage of an anti-vigilante act. Rorschach, a vigilante detective who operates illegally, discovers that the dead man was Edward Blake, better known as the comedian, a costumed hero who worked for the government. Suspecting that other vigilantes could be attacked, Rorschach warns members of his former team, the Watchmen. Rorschach's former partner Dan Dreiberg believes he is paranoid, but relays his concerns to Adrian Veidt, a crime fighter turned businessman, but he also dismisses the concerns. Rorschach later visits Dr. Manhattan, a physicist whose accidental superpowers make him a national security asset, but Manhattan is preoccupied with energy research and ignores him. At Blake's funeral, Manhattan, Veidt and Dreiberg each recall the comedian's pessimism in his later years about the Watchman's mission. After the service, a lone mourner pays his respects. Rorschach tracks down and questions the mourner, former supervillain Edgar Jacoby. Jacoby says that Blake had recently broken into his apartment while he was sleeping, tearful, unmasked, and incoherent. Rorschach is astonished but doubts that Jacoby would tell a lie so bizarre. During a press interview with Dr. Manhattan, an investigative journalist tells him that several people who had been in contact with Manhattan have developed cancer, including his former girlfriend. As other reporters mob Manhattan with questions, he snaps and exiles himself to Mars. Alone, Manhattan reflects on his existence and his regrets at being turned into a weapon. In his absence, the Warsaw-pact countries make aggressive moves, and Nixon prepares for war. Veidt survives an assassination attempt, suggesting that Rorschach's mass killer theory is correct. Dreiberg takes in Laurie Jupiter, a second-generation vigilante and estranged lover of Manhattan, to whom Dreiberg is attracted. Rorschach's investigation of the assassin leads him back to Jacoby. Rorschach finds Jacoby dead and himself framed for Jacoby's murder. After a battle with police, Rorschach is arrested and unmasked as a low-born vagrant. In prison, Rorschach defends his vigilantism to a psychiatrist, saying he cannot ignore evil and the people who cause it. Dreiberg and Jupiter, after donning their costumes and saving multiple people from a burning building, have sex. Imprisoned crime boss Big Figure stages a riot as a cover for assassinating Rorschach. The attack fails, and Rorschach kills Big Figure and his accomplices before leaving the prison with Dreiberg and Jupiter, who have arrived to break him out. Manhattan teleports Jupiter to Mars while Dreiberg joins Rorschach's investigation of the Blake murder. Evidence points them to Veidt as the mastermind. They find him at an Antarctic hideout, where he has just overseen the activation of Dr. Manhattan's energy reactors in New York City and other locations across the planet. On Mars, Jupiter tries to convince Manhattan that humanity is worth saving. She succeeds only when he learns that Jupiter is Blake's illegitimate daughter, a fact so unlikely, as Blake had once tried to rape Jupiter's mother, that it restores his respect for life. Veidt admits orchestrating Manhattan's exile, staging the assassination, framing Rorschach, and killing Blake, who was spying on his activities. He has also executed the final step of his plan, turning the world against Manhattan by rigging his reactors to explode, killing 15 million people. Manhattan returns with Jupiter to a devastated New York, pieces together what has happened, and teleports to Veidt's hideout. After a brief struggle, Veidt shows him that the world's countries have put aside their rivalries to focus on a common enemy, Dr. Manhattan. Realizing the logic of Veidt's plan, the Watchmen agree to keep his secret, except for Rorschach, whom Manhattan reluctantly kills to preserve the new global peace. Manhattan departs permanently for another galaxy while Dreiberg rebukes Veidt's moral sacrifice, and Jupiter finally comes to terms with her parentage. A New York tabloid editor, disgusted that there is no war to report on, tells a staff member to choose something from the crank file, which contains Rorschach's journal. Here are a list of themes and symbols in the film. Themes: power and corruption. Watchmen critically examines how immense power, particularly superhuman power, can distort morality and justice. Dr. Manhattan, once human, grows emotionally distant as his godlike abilities evolve. The film questions whether anyone with such power can remain ethical or relatable. Moral relativism and utilitarianism. The central moral dilemma, whether to kill millions to save billions, poses a profound ethical question. Ozymandias embodies the utilitarian principle, the greatest good for the greatest number, while Rorschach represents absolute moral conviction, refusing to compromise even in the face of catastrophe. The illusion of heroism. Unlike traditional superhero stories, Watchmen portrays its heroes as flawed, traumatized, and morally ambiguous individuals. It challenges the myth of the righteous, noble superhero and instead presents vigilantes as complex, often damaged, people. Determinism and free will. Dr. Manhattan perceives time as nonlinear, believing all events are predetermined. This challenges the notion of free will and human agency, suggesting that destiny may be fixed, regardless of human desire or intervention. The fear of nuclear annihilation. Set against the backdrop of Cold War tensions, the film uses the threat of global nuclear war as a metaphor for humanity's self-destructive tendencies and the existential dread that define an era. Masks and identity. Masks serve as both literal and metaphorical shields. Characters hide their true selves behind personas, raising questions about authenticity, trauma, and the line between justice and escapism. Symbols. The smiley face with bloodstain. Comedian's iconic badge becomes the film's central visual motif. The smiley face represents naive optimism, while the bloodstain disrupts it, symbolizing the corruption of innocence and the intrusion of violence into idealism. Dr. Manhattan, blue glow and atom symbol. His blue, glowing body and atomic insignia represent pure scientific power detached from humanity. He is both a symbol of divine detachment and the terrifying potential of nuclear energy. The doomsday clock. A visual motif throughout the film, it symbolizes the ever-approaching threat of annihilation. Each movement closer to midnight reflects escalating global tensions and moral compromise. Ozymandias's pyramid and Egyptian imagery. His complex evokes themes of empire, legacy, and godlike ambition. His architecture reflects hubris, an echo of ancient rulers who built monuments to their supposed wisdom and immortality. Rorschach's mask, inkblot. Constantly shifting, the mask symbolizes moral ambiguity and subjective truth. It also reflects Rorschach's worldview: the world is chaos, and he is the uncompromising force of judgment. Glass palace on Mars. Dr. Manhattan's Martian construct represents isolation and perfection detached from human needs. It symbolizes his alienation from art and the fragility of human values when viewed from a godlike perspective. Conclusion. Watchmen, 2009, is a dark, deconstructive superhero narrative that challenges traditional notions of morality, heroism, and power. Through its themes of moral ambiguity, existential dread, and societal decay, it presents a world where the line between savior and tyrant is dangerously thin. With its rich symbolism and philosophical depth, Watchmen is not just a critique of the superhero genre, it is a meditation on humanity's capacity for destruction, and the difficult ethical choices that arise in the shadow of apocalypse. Here is a detailed character analysis of the main characters from Watchmen, 2009, directed by Zack Snyder and adapted from the graphic novel by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. The film explores morally complex, flawed heroes in an alternate timeline where the US won the Vietnam War and superheroes exist, but are mostly banned. Dr. Manhattan/John Osterman, Billy Crudup. A physicist transformed into a godlike being after a lab accident, John is no longer bound by time, space, or human emotion. He exists outside of linear reality, seeing all events simultaneously. Core traits: detached, omnipotent, emotionally distant. Arc: struggles to find meaning in humanity after transcending it. Through Laurie, he reconnects with the concept of human uniqueness and miracles. Symbolism: represents science's detachment from humanity, pure logic and determinism. Also serves as a godlike figure who questions the value of free will and emotion. Rorschach/Walter Kovacs, Jackie L. Haley. A masked vigilante who sees the world in stark moral absolutes, right and wrong, with no gray areas. He wears a constantly shifting inkblot mask and investigates the mystery behind the comedian's death. Core traits: rigid, violent, uncompromising, deeply traumatized. Arc: never wavers in his morality, even when it leads to his death. Symbolism: embodies moral absolutism and the dangers and power of unflinching conviction. His death is both tragic and heroic. He dies for the truth, not compromise. Night Owl 2/Dan Dreiberg, Patrick Wilson. A mild-mannered, retired vigilante who modeled himself after Batman. He is nostalgic for the past and uses gadgets and vehicles to fight crime. Core traits: gentle, thoughtful, unsure of himself. Arc: rediscovers purpose and passion through action and love with Laurie. Symbolism: represent the idealism and comfort of classic superheroes. What happens when those ideals confront a cynical, real world? Silk Spectre 2/Laurie Jupiter, Malin Ackerman. The daughter of the original Silk Spectre and a reluctant second-generation hero. She is torn between her mother's expectations and her own identity. Core traits: compassionate, bold, emotionally vulnerable. Arc: struggles with her origin, relationships, and self-worth until she finds agency. Her discovery of her parentage and connection with John rekindles his belief in humanity. Symbolism: Laurie represents the human side of the superhero myth, caught between duty, identity, and legacy. Ozymandias/Adrian Veidt, Matthew Good. The smartest man in the world and a former costumed hero who believes in sacrificing millions to save billions. He orchestrates a global catastrophe to unite humanity. Core traits: brilliant, manipulative, utopian, egotistical. Arc: plays the long game to enforce peace through a lie, never wavers in his logic, even when confronted. Symbolism: embodies utilitarianism and intellectual elitism, asking whether the end justifies the means. He is a chilling vision of a savior willing to become the villain for peace. The comedian/Edward Blake, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. A government-sanctioned vigilante and war criminal, Blake is a brutal, nihilistic figure who sees the darkness in the world and mocks it. Core traits: cynical, violent, morally bankrupt, but insightful. Arc: though dead at the film's start, Blake's legacy and flashbacks reveal a man who understood the grim truth of humanity before anyone else. Symbolism: the comedian represents the moral decay of American power and the tragic wisdom that comes from seeing the world for what it really is. His name is ironic, his laughter comes from despair. Sally Jupiter/Silk Spectre, Carla Gugino. Laurie's mother and a retired pin-up-style superheroine. Her past is complicated by trauma and sexual violence at the hands of the comedian, whom she paradoxically loved. Core traits: flawed, nostalgic, hardened. Symbolism: Sally represents the complicated legacy of female superheroes, objectified and undervalued, yet pivotal in shaping future generations. Summary of symbolic themes through characters. Dr. Manhattan equals science and God. Rorschach equals moral absolutism. Ozymandias equals utilitarianism and control. Night Owl equals nostalgic idealism. Laurie Jupiter equals human emotion and identity. The comedian equals nihilism and brutal truth. Final note. Watchmen deconstructs the superhero mythos by asking, what if superheroes weren't inherently good? What if power corrupted absolutely? What if the saviors we admired were deeply broken? Each character is a philosophical archetype, and their conflicts reflect real-world ideologies: science versus humanity, truth versus peace, justice versus order. Here is a detailed overview of the production and design of the film. Production overview. Director: Zack Snyder. Production designer: Alex McDowell, Minority Report, Fight Club. Cinematographer: Larry Fong. Costume designer: Michael Wilkinson. VFX Studios: Sony Pictures Imageworks, Intelligent Creatures, MPC. Primary filming location: Vancouver, British Columbia, with massive soundstage built and urban exterior shoots. Budget: approximate $130 million. Artist palette production design themes. Alex McDowell's approach was to recreate the visual language of the graphic novel, updating it with cinematic realism while retaining stylized framing, colors, and iconography. The design concept was rooted in an alternate 1980s America, where superheroes influenced real-world geopolitics. Nixon is still president. The US won the Vietnam War. Cities are grimy, brutalist, and soaked in paranoia. Small Blue Diamond key locations and set designs. 1. New York City, alternate 1985. Inspired by 1970s 80s Manhattan, but exaggerated to feel more chaotic and morally decayed. Built using a full backlit city set in Vancouver with functional neon signs, period-specific arts, trash-strewn streets, and graffiti. Posters and newsboxes reflect the pervasive nuclear anxiety and social unrest. 2. The comedian's apartment. The film opens here, and it immediately sets the tone: dark, moody, filled with Americana paraphernalia, weapons, and government memorabilia. The fight scene is staged with brutal realism amid personal relics, an aesthetic that blends patriotism and corruption. 3. Owlship Archie and Dan Dreiberg's lair. A central steampunk retrofuturistic element. Archie, the flying owl-like vehicle, was built as a practical full-size prop on a gimbal rig. The lair is designed like a forgotten Batcave, dusty, analog, filled with outdated but powerful tech, gear lockers, and blueprints. 4. Adrian Veidt Antarctic Fortress, Karnak. Karnak is opulent, futuristic, and Egyptian-inspired, a dramatic visual break from the grungy realism of the rest of the film. Built with symmetry, gold lighting, polished stone, and minimalist surfaces to reflect Veidt's obsession with perfection and control. The window behind Veidt often frames Antarctica, giving a sense of icy detachment and godlike distance. 5. Dr. Manhattan's lab and Mars landscape. Dr. Manhattan's base is sleek, sterile, filled with glowing tech, surveillance displays, and glass partitions. Mars sequences were digitally rendered to reflect a majestic but empty red wasteland, with crystalline clockwork structures symbolizing time and detachment from humanity. Quote: costume and character design. Costume designer, Michael Wilkinson. 1. Realistic reimagining of costumes. Wilkinson avoided traditional spandex, instead drawing from leather, armor, tactical gear, and historical references. Rorschach, classic 1940s detective trench coat and fedora, mask uses animated ink blot patterns via subtle VFX. Night Owl 2, armored bodysuit with an owl motif, a parody of Batman but grounded in functional detail. Silk Spectre 2, a blend of 1940s pin-up and 1980s glam, sleek but deliberately sexualized to reflect the male gaze her character rebels against. Dr. Manhattan, fully CGI, portrayed via motion capture by Billy Crudup, glowing blue, semi-translucent skin with visible organs, meant to be unnervingly inhuman. Ozymandias, veit Egyptian golds and purples, modeled after Alexander the Great's aesthetic. Armor has clean, Roman-style lines, reflecting God-complex ambition. 2. The Minutemen flashbacks. Vintage costumes from the 1940s evoke the golden age of comics with exaggerated shoulder pads, capes, and collar blocking. Intentional theatricality emphasizes the performative nature of early superheroism. Wrench visual effect and cinematography. CGI enhancements, used extensively for Dr. Manhattan, motion capture and full-body replacement. Destruction sequences, e.g., Vietnam War, Mars terrain, city explosions. Digital recreations of cities, Mars, and particle effects. Stylized cinematography. Saturated colors and slow-motion action sequences. Panel-accurate compositions, often framing shots to directly mirror comic book panels. Blue and amber filters distinguish cold versus warm aural centers. Headphone sound design and music. Composer, Tyler Bates. The score features dark orchestral tones, pulsing synths, and minimalist motifs. Musical themes were tailored to each character, ominous for Rorschach, grand for Manhattan, militaristic for Veidt. Soundtrack, curated by Snyder himself. Songs like The Times They Are A-Changin', Bob Dylan, and All Along the Watchtower, Jimi Hendrix, are placed over montage sequences, highlighting irony and historical commentary. Sound effects, especially explosions, Heartbeat of Mars, and the hum of Archie, are stylized but grounded in analog realism. Television symbolic set pieces and design motifs. Clock imagery, present throughout the film on Mars, in Karnak, in framing devices, symbolizing inevitability and Manhattan's deterministic worldview. Masks and identity, Rorschach's mask, Night Owl's goggles, and Veidt's force are visual metaphors for persona versus truth. Decay and grandeur, the Watchman's world is full of monuments and ruins, physically and morally crumbling under the weight of their histories. Trophy legacy and influence. While divisive among fans of the graphic novel, the film's visual fidelity and production design are widely praised. It inspired the look and tone of later serious superhero adaptations, The Boys, Daredevil, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Its approach to alternate history through immersive design influenced series like The Man in the High Castle and Watchmen, HBO.
So here are my personal insights and interpretations of Watchmen, including favorite moments and characters. So it starts out with the death of the comedian. So the comedian would have been 1985 superhero, actually named Edward Blake. He is beaten and thrown from a high-rise window by a mysterious figure, right? So this figure seems to be in shadow, the whole time while he's beating on the comedian, right? And the comedian takes some lick, but at the same time, him can't get fair. Lick him back in the same way I'm supposed to get him, right? It's a very, very violent and stylized tone, and it sets the tone of the entire film. Make we understand say one dark tone, right? There's even a point where we see a close-up of the smiley face that him always aware that the comedian always aware that the smiley face button and a drop of his blood when him get hit one at a time them, because it kind of have a little, fast moving, fast paced fight, but at the same time it kind of have a slow mo kind of thing going, right? Yeah. And then we basically get long opening credits basically set to the song The Times They Are Changing. And of course, by now you would have realized that this podcast episode opened with this song, right? Now, it shows the rise and fall of the Minutemen, right? So those were the original OG heroes, basically. And they're from the 1940s. And we can see where public adoration take time turn out to be more or less scandalous, leading to death and some serious political paranoia. And, finally, we get to the Watchmen, who they would have been the ones in the 1970s, right? And the president at the time, President Nixon, he outlaws mass vigilantes with the Keene Act of 1977. But even though he did that, he did allow Dr. Manhattan, because Dr. Manhattan is almost like the Superman of this world, right? Of this universe, within the DC universe, right? So, yeah, the comedian as well, because originally the comedian was the one who assassinated Kennedy, right? We saw that in one of the clips. And yeah, it turned out to be added to the team of heroes. And then now we see where Rorschach enters the fray, right? And I investigate him at the last vigilante, illegal vigilante, masked, and in my investigate comedian murder, basically. No, he believes that someone try to pick off costume heroes, right? And so he bring what he believe as well as some of the evidence of what he believes to some of the former teammates of the Watchmen. Dan, who is a night owl. Well, night owl 2, you can call it, because his father is the original night owl, right? And then talk to Laurie Jupiter, who she is a Silk Spectre. Again, her mother was the original Silk Spectre, right? And she's actually living with Dr. Manhattan, right? Because the two of them there. Now, Dr. Manhattan empowers basically allow him to be able to see all of time at once, right? Him can pretty much do a lot of things, right? Him have telekinesis, him can control things in the air with his mind and all of that, yeah. And then finally, Adrian Void, Ozymandias, who is a billionaire genius and is the only one who really revealed his identity to become a public figure. You see how that works? This film traffic basically drop us right into the deep end at the very beginning there. To actually show us, say, hey, all of the other ones, they would have sacrificed their roles as vigilante, right? And some of them stepped away, some of them stepped into shadows, right? To avoid scrutiny and to avoid jail. Now this man here, he actually revealed him identity, right? When he realized that was going on, he revealed him identity, and by becoming a public figure now, he's able to leverage that for make a profit and make money. Yeah. There are some parallels here with real life, you know? We all know what I'm talking about, right? And then at some point, we get an introduction to the comic book story of Tales of the Black Freighter, right? So one young boy, there one magazine stand and I read one comic, and basically we get, as the audience, we get thrown into that story. So it's an animated story. It's a story within a story that follows a sailor who escaped a shipwreck, right? Based on what it seemed happening. It seemed like there was some kind of dangerous pirates or some tormented souls that basically caused him ship and his crew to be lost at sea, right? And he's the only one that survived, right? And when him get washed up ashore, him decides say him need to get back to his homeland, to his town, to warn of an impending attack by the ship, right? The Black Freighter. In a lot of ways, this didn't dawn on me until probably later on that whole comic book story was a smaller little plot device that the creators used to kind of pull us in, for kind of give us this idea about what the message of the film is trying to take, right? Which it's in a lot of ways it parallels Vide's descent into monstrous heroism. Yeah. So little after that, we have a big disintegration of the team, right? Rorschach continues his investigation and discovered that there's a link between Blake and the government secrets, right? Dr. Manhattan gets set up basically. Everybody who he would have been around, him former partner, right? Someone who worked with him on the project, and his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, them claims they have cancer, right? And so when them start ask questions and thing, I mean, media and everybody, you know, they around him and ask him one by a question. The man explode literally. But them, you know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? Right on camera, everybody see it. You know, tell him, say, leave me alone. And then literally leave him alone because him basically explode. Because him have the power for be able to take a person and basically move them to a different location. So him can transport you, him can teleport you, right? Yeah. Take your molecules and reconstitute you somewhere else. So, yeah, that happened. So, we'll get to see some flashbacks about Dr. Manhattan's origin, that he was a scientist named John Osterman, and, you know, him, by accident, the man end up in a situation, like most superheroes that end up with their superpowers. Everybody go for a leave outside of the lab, you know, right? And him head back into the lab because him forgets him left him watch inside there, right? Inside of the machine, right? That they are doing the experiment with. And there was a timer, I guess, on the door. And as him go in, so he never have much time for turn back and come out, the door locked on him, locking him in, and it's those kind of mechanism that basically it can't get shut down because of safety protocols, right? And all of that. And the machine disintegrate him, right? And when him get disintegrated, I think they use the word discorporated or something like that. He, everybody thinks him dead, so them hold a funeral for him, right? I'll bury him. I bury what they think, them not a body for bury him, but they, what I mean? They were able to basically have a service for him and thing. And like after that, probably weeks or so, him get incorporated again, reincorporated. This, started to see different parts, like them, them see different layers of the body. They see the muscles, they see skin, them see, until fully incorporate back. Yeah. And, basically this would have left him without his humanity anymore because he's no longer human in that sense. And so him now have much of an emotion, and Laurie, she leave him too. This was before him got a press conference and him tell people to leave him alone. Larry left him, right? After them did have some weird sex, because there's a weird sex scene where he's doing all sort of stuff to her and thing while he was working. Beckham can do that too. That was one of his power to him, can be in multiple places at one time and thing. And, he's like trying to apologize because she feel upset, say, him not focused 100% on her, him there in multiple places, their work and him, and him have sex, like, yeah. How many guys would want to, power like this, you know what I'm saying? That would be, nobody wouldn't even know, say you can't do them thing, right? Yeah. Anyways, back to the movie. So we get another glimpse of the tears of the Black Freighter, right? So we see where the sailor start to build a raft out of the corpses of his crew, right? So yeah, the man crew totally gaseous now because apparently when the body decomposes, it's filled with a lot of gas. Yeah. And so that helps to make his raft buoyant, if you know what I mean, right? And him set sail on the open sea, right? All the things happen and him end up a ditch the raft because, him eventually make it to his hometown, to the land, see one man with one woman, them a do them business, right? They were, playing around and about to have sex and thing. And him beat the man to death and the woman, him kill her too. I think he snapped her neck or something like that. And then he took the horses that they were riding on and basically disguised himself like he is the man and, put her upon the horse, right? Basically riding into town thinking, say, he's about to save his family from the pirates that are definitely there in his head. When he comes up on his home, he goes inside the house and in the dark, in his daughter's room, he sees a mysterious figure heading and apparently almost lunging towards him. And he beats the hell out of that person, only to discover that that person was his wife, and he hears the screams of his daughters coming from the bed, seeing what he has done. His wife, in her last breath, asks why. When he realized what he had done, him took foot and run towards the beach. And when him reached the beach, because he couldn't believe, said the pirates them don't come. And he reached the beach, him see the freighter out on the water, as if they were waiting on him. So him go there to them, and then basically pull him aboard. And that was it. That even the young man who was reading the comic, right? And this would have happened at different points, on different days. So he went back to the magazine guy who was selling the comics and so on and reading it and stuff. And so when he come and read it this time, it was like, can't believe the comic really end like that. And he's like, a foolishness this. And the magazine man say, may I agree with you? A real foolishness, It's like, yeah. But yeah, I thought it was stupid too when it ended like that. I'm like, what the heck? And the show not done yet. I say, yo, what are they trying to achieve with this in the middle of the show? I thought they were trying to give us some sign of something good that's gonna come out of this. Like perhaps it was all a dream or something like that. Yeah. But as we will learn later on, the story's moral is basically a moral about Void and what he did. Now, the mask comes off. So, Rorschach, who has been wearing his mask up until now, and when he goes undercover, right, without wearing his mask, he takes off the mask and because nobody would have expected this man is like a beggar man, and him always, from the beginning of the film, I kept seeing this man walking around with a sign to say something about the end is near or something like that. And I say, yo, I'm to the brother here, why is he so significant that they keep having him showing up in every scene? So when them frame him and the police them come after him and beat him and unmask him, and you realize, say, is this a brother here? You say, yo, what the heck? This a man here? You don't think, say, him does a refuse of a society, but he's the most intelligent. Rorschach is the most intelligent superhero. Right? And I say superhero because I feel like his intelligence is his superpower. Right? That being said, they may imprison him though, right? And while him there in a prison, he must send message to the prisoner them to leave him alone because prisoner him send some of them there and they basically have it out for him. Right? They have revenge, boiling and toiling with, We'll be right back after these messages. Content warning. This episode includes detailed discussions of violence. We strive to handle these topics with care, but some content may be upsetting to certain audiences. Listener discretion is advised. The world getting louder, more chaotic, and in the middle of it, this little podcast whispering across the static like a mass vigilante no one asks for. It's not monetized. No ads, no corporate overlords, just ideas, and maybe a few inconvenient truths. If you found something real in it, share it with someone who still sees the cracks in the mask. Leave a comment. Let me know you're watching too. Every listen, follow, and share keeps the signal alive. Because out here, even gods wear disguises, and sometimes the only thing standing between silence and meaning is you. So Dan and Laurie now end up have to rescue him, right? And how them end up rescue him is that after Laurie had left Dr. Manhattan, she got to Dan. But in a flashback, we would have seen where probably the day when they met, right? Them they take one group picture as superheroes. And the day that Dan and Laurie eyes met, right? As their superhero selves, right? And you could have seen that there was something between these two people, okay? Yeah, man. Larry Dan some yay, you see me? And Dan get some yay to one thing, you know? Yeah. So it wasn't hard to believe that, hey, at this point, they would want to get together, right? And it started out with something simple because they both share this yearning for justice, right? Making things right. So they end up walk on the streets by themselves, turn up one alley, and some guys follow them up the alley. And the guys them close in upon them and they're like, you know, a long time I not do this, you know. Let's get this done. You know? It's like, you see they beat the frazzle out of all of them and them bone and thing. I mean, real visceral stuff, guys. Teeth get knocked out. You know what I'm saying? This film did not spare on the graphic details, just like the graphic novels, they are clear. So that springboards them into this whole thing of Dan and Laurie end up back at Dan's place, right? Which has his secret underground railway system where him have this machine called Archimedes, which is a cool looking vehicle. I mean, it looked like an eagle, right? With the two round something, look like eyes. And it does, yeah, and searchlight everything. Anyways, I'm just fanboying out on that particular thing. You need to watch the film, of course, to get the descriptions that I'm trying to give here, okay? Yeah, the thing does no say it does look like an owl, right? And Laurie was fascinated about it, and she went in there and she did something and triggered some fire, and the fire almost burned down part of the lair. And so if Rafa Rudd come down and help, and he's like, no, it's fine. You know, comedian burned down the whole thing when I timed them too. So you're good, you know? So when they connect over that, they were about to do the duel, you know what I'm saying? As in the adult stuff, the sex stuff, and then Dan couldn't go on, right? Man had problem, right? Dysfunctional problem. Yeah, when that happened, brain and head don't work, right? Anyways, I'm trying to keep it a little bit PG, but not too X-rated, okay? So, again, this is something you have to see there, right? So, the man decides to boy, thing nah go on with nothing or whatever. But after they spoke and thing, and she was, talking about the whole thing, they basically spark up the whole vibe of, let's do something. Let's go and rescue Rorschach from prison. So that's how they end up going to rescuing him. When them going to prison for go rescue him, yeah, prisoner them did have a plan. So a riot was started and they were about to cut him to pieces or something. But of course, knowing Rorschach, him wasn't going to go quietly. And Rorschach is very lethal, right? With him two-hand them alone. right? I mean, yeah, one of the guys had to actually cut one of the other guys away from the cell because of what happened, right? Like literally cutting two hand them off. Yeah, that was visceral. Yeah. So Rorschach get out, go and get him a mask, put on him a hero costume and thing. When Dan and Laurie come now, basically there was much things they had to do, right? Them just had to just say, hey, Rorschach were there, you know. Rorschach go to the bathroom and deal with the one guy because the guy run going to the bathroom. So he's like, I need to use the bathroom for a while. And come back. It's like, yeah, we don't have killer go kill the man in there. And he go in there go kill the man. Right? Anyways, so them they're there and, I connect the dots them and, realize, say, there's something going on. Right? Of course, Dr. Manhattan was on Mars when Dan and Laurie get back to the lair with Rorschach. Dr. Manhattan was waiting, apparently, right? But he was basically using one of his other powers, which is to show himself there. Him say him up on Mars, Can I say, but still up on Mars? Can the man say, you come back? I said, no, I'm still up on Mars. Anyways, so then basically Laurie him say want to talk to, right? So him teleport Laurie to Mars. Now, Dr. Manhattan, not being human and understanding humanity, he totally forgot that when you take a human being who breathes air on Earth and put them on Mars, you need to provide air for them. And Laurie almost choked to death until he realized, it sometimes splits my mind about human beings. It's like, it's like, what the heck? But anyways, you understand, the being is just not human, so it doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand what it is to fear, to feel certain things. Anyways, him and I have one lovely chat while Dan and Rorschach then basically discover some things about Adrian and them say, what, we need to find where he is. We discover same there Antarctica and them travel to Antarctica. Right? So them reach Antarctica and thing and them try to sneak up on Vide. But of course, Vide had surveillance cameras, was watching what was going on, and sister they enter, no was them there. So him basically have them come at him, attack him and thing, and him defend himself really well. And him start to tell them him plan. Right? So, in true comic book fashion, you're expecting that once the villain has told you his plan, you have to try to think of a way right away. If you're a superhero, if you're a hero, you want to save people, you have time now to basically save the day. But what Vi did is that when they arrived, he triggered the destruction because what he did was that he took Dr. Manhattan's, basically his powers, basically him sampled it and thing, and he was able to reproduce it and him build something that would basically be able to deploy it and in the middle of the thing there, in the middle of New York, right? And at that point, they were like, because they were asking, if, him for stop and thing, but he's like, wouldn't just tell him a plan and when they execute it. I'm not stupid. Basically it was like, you didn't expect that. Didn't expect that at all. So him plan it done succeed already. Millions died, including magazine guy and the youth who that read the comic. Yeah, man, them did dead there. And them, just at the point where you saw the devastation, they got wiped out. Yeah. Now, Nixon, he would have been putting into plan because when they find out, say, a Dr. Manhattan energy signature, they formed an alliance. They hurry up and rush a treaty with the USSR, basically for, align themselves together so that they are safer that way, I guess. Yeah. So, of course, Dr. Manhattan, knowing what happened, him arrived with Laurie and him apparently chased down Adrian into one section of the lair, and it was the same kind of machine that this incorporates or disintegrates the body and so on, and basically tried to trap Dr. Manhattan, thinking that this would work. And it didn't, of course, because Dr. Manhattan says he learned on day one how to reintegrate. So basically I say, try to disintegrate me, know how that going to work, because I already know how to reintegrate myself easily, with ease. So at that point, Dr. Manhattan was able to, at his whim, to basically crush Adrian, right? But Dr. Manhattan realized the logic of Adrian's plan, which was to force the world, because from the beginning of the film, we were given that teaser to say the world is teetering on nuclear annihilation, right? We have seconds to midnight, right? Scientists are saying, the greatest scientists are saying, we have seconds to midnight. And then the other thing is that the US had Dr. Manhattan, right? USSR don't have nothing like that, nothing near that. The Dr. Manhattan allowed the US to win the war against the Vietnam, right? So basically going to Vietnam and him take out every single. They said that scene they did terribly, man. The man does a walk in, because him can make himself big and small, So he make himself real big like a giant, and him a walk in. The man a comedian. Going, guns are blazing, right? Pop shot and bust up. That's one of the backstories, one of the flashbacks them that we saw, from up in the film. And so, being that, yes, boy, Dr. Manhattan isn't necessarily the best superhero, right? When he hears that this plan that Adrian has hatched has gotten the two major nuclear heads together in an agreement of peace, he decides that the truth would be too costly. So, him no want undo that. And of course, everybody else was like, maybe I have a point, except for Rorschach, who said right then and there, me say, yo, no, me nah make that happen. And him leave everybody present and walk out into the snow, ready to go back to civilization to tell the truth. But Dr. Manhattan confront him. And it's almost like Dr. Manhattan give him one last warning, like him and say, yo, don't do this. Cause me have to go. And Rorschach is like, oh, we realize that kill you want kill me, so kill me then. Kill me! And him take off him mask, right? And Dr. Manhattan disincorporates Rorschach right in front of Dan. Yeah. Yeah, this film is something else, right? So little after this, we get to say the city where the Void's attack would have done, and a little ways away from there are people, and stuff, and you can see where they're rebuilding and so on and thing. Rorschach's journal apparently gets mailed to the New Frontiersman, right? A newspaper. So it was right on top. As if Rorschach did plan out, him did know, say, anything could have happened to him, so him have a backup plan. Dan and Laurie, them going to hiding under no names. And Dr. Manhattan, him say, he might depart for another galaxy. One of the funniest things was that Adrian asks Dr. Manhattan if he did the right thing. And Dr. Manhattan answer say, nothing ever ends. Yeah. I think take a few moments, because this film really challenges you to think about morality and whether certain things are right, whether it was right for them to use that situation to push peace, and whether it was necessary to use. So obviously, the Tales of the Black Freighter, I would have mentioned, it has some strong symbolism that is tied to Adrian Void, right? So the sailor represents Void, which is driven by righteous fear, but him lose him humanity. The town is Earth, saved through mass deception and death. The freighter, guilt, always looming behind those who betray their morality for the greater good. Yeah. This film is a visually faithful but a narratively condensed version of the graphic novel. It has a lot of philosophical weight of the superheroes as flawed humans. And it basically questions whether heroism built on lies can save the world. So it and the Tales of the Black Freighter, it can be said how noble our intentions can create monstrous consequences. Because sometimes, perhaps the way how you might think about a particular situation, it might not necessarily be the best way to approach it. You might think you're doing the right thing, but is it right for that perspective, or because you are the one looking onto the situation? Yeah, that's my analysis and interpretations of Watchmen. So here are my theories about unresolved mysteries and plot points. So there's some key unresolved plot points, like Void's master plan and moral ambiguity. Because Ozymandias come up with the idea of having event that is so catastrophic, right? Detonating energy reactors that kill millions, right? In order to unite humanity against a common enemy, which is Dr. Manhattan in this case. So this is left open, right, as an ethical dilemma, because sacrificing millions to save billions, yeah, that's a debate that, I think would have to show some kind of justification of him action. Of course, the Watchmen, them decide to keep the truth a secret, except for Rorschach, right? Who is killed by Dr. Manhattan because he refused, right? This definitely raised some question surrounding the truth versus peace. Is it worth it? And then we wonder what the significance, the real significance of Laurie's parentage, right? So in the film, we kind of get this fake out where Laurie mother, right, the Silk Spectre, original Silk Spectre, seemingly was raped by the comedian, right? Almost seemed to be raped, right? But one of the other heroes, he came in, and saw him and give him some peltings, some beat him down and thing, and stop him. So when this is revealed now that, the knowledge of this that Dr. Manhattan would have had, it definitely make you think about the character's motivations and some of the implications with take on, Because me I wonder to myself, say, how it is that it would have been a case where, he was allowed or he was able to go through with what we do, But then we did see that flashback where him and the Vietnam woman, right? And him almost kill her, you know what I'm saying? Him almost kill her. Dr. Manhattan's exile and return. So Dr. Manhattan basically exiled himself to Mars after them start ask be a question about the people them close to him developing cancer. So Laurie and him have a chat basically. Due to her reasoning, it basically make him decide to come back to Earth. Now, the film show the him internal struggle, but it basically leave a lot of things up in the air about powers and the perspective on the humanity, and its future when him decide to depart for another galaxy. The mass killer and the murder investigation. So yes, Rorschach did suspect someone of killing the vigilantes, and him did a look for chase down those conspiracy, right? Which was framed by Void, right? But there are some details around the investigation and the timeline that them never really fully go into, and it made it seem like them kind of brush over it, and it make it inconsistent. Probably it's because them kind of just pull it from the graphic novel, and I'm not really get fist, build on it the way they need to for the film, Rorschach's journal and its impact. So at the end of the film, Rorschach journal, we have all of the conspiracy information documented in there, and all of that gets into the hands of the editor for the tabloid, who basically have to go be the one now for expose the truth. So we basically not get to see how this are going to impact the peace that was won, and how it's going to be resolved. And then there's the adaptation choices, and there are some key changes from the graphic novel, right? So it would have been a giant alien squid monster that is the apocalyptic threat, right? But in the film, they basically say it is Dr. Manhattan's powers that is used, right? So it basically shifts from that more fantastical kind of thing, right? And bring it towards a more personalized touch, giving the film a little bit more, what do you call it now? Gravitas, I think. I think it was a good choice. And then finally, costume and vigilante realism. So Rorschach's mask, it almost seemed like a fictional concept of a liquid ink symmetry, So, but I wonder, because it was never really shown as to how it really worked, that it's able to change, what scientifically plausible explanation is there for it, right? The film not go into it and thing, right? And with the whole idea of the fact that vigilantism is illegal, right? And the way how the public perceives all of this, because we don't really get to see how law enforcement, response is done, and those kind of things never get fleshed out. But big spoiler here, in the 2019 series, there are a few of these that are explored, and that's all I will say for now. So stay tuned for that one. Yeah. Share your favorite Watchmen moments or theories. Put them in the comments. So in this episode, we looked at Watchmen. We looked at power, the unescapable magnitude of Dr. Manhattan's abilities. We looked at morality and how warped morality can become when certain decisions and certain choices are made. And we looked at the mask we wear, not the physical mask, but the psychological mask that we sometimes put on to give the impression that our works and our decisions necessarily the best ones, even sometimes when we lack the precognition to see into the future, to be able to know what the true ends of our decisions and choices are. We're human, we make mistakes, and sometimes we don't see the full picture when making certain decisions. But what sets us apart from those who don't care about their decisions is that when we find out we're wrong, we can correct ourselves. We can go back and think about what it is that we could have done better. We could retrospect. And this is what allows us to be able to move forward and to become better individuals. That is it. Our quest through the universe of sci-fi television has reached a powerful milestone, 1,000 downloads. But the journey continues as we now venture towards the next marker, 1250. Your support is the magic that drives us forward. Share, follow, and let your voice ripple through the stars. Until we meet again, may wonder be your compass and curiosity your guide.